Welcome, welcome. I'm going to invite you to turn on your cameras if it's at all possible, just so we can connect a little bit better. Um, and I am so excited because, man, you are in for a treat. Um, so let me know. Can you guys let me know if you've ever looked at your career objectively and thought, on paper, this looks pretty great. But man, why does it feel so off? Yeah? Anybody? Well, let me tell you, the woman leading this. Oh, oh, can't turn off camera. No worries. Glad that you're here. So glad that you're here. Um, and I can feel, so you're showing up in the chat. That makes it even better. So great. So anyway, so show up in the chat. Have you ever looked at your career objectively and said, this looks great on paper, but why do I feel so off? Let me know if that's you. But the woman, yes, that's why you're here, right? The woman leading this session today is the person you've been waiting to meet. For nearly 2 decades, Meredith Masse has been the leadership development pro and coach that high-achieving mid-career leaders turn to when they're done second-guessing and ready to actually choose what's next. Oh, and I know all too well, personally, that she has a gift for cutting through the noise, the fear, and the what will people think concerns, and maybe I should just be grateful and settle for what I have, and really help leaders get absolutely clear on what they actually want in their careers. And then she supports them in going after it intentionally without blowing up everything they've worked for. Her clients get promoted, they land new roles they actually want, and they see, are you guys ready for this? They see 30K to 100K or more in compensation increases, not because they chase titles, but because they actually started leading as themselves authentically. She is a certified energy leadership coach. She is warm, she is direct. She will call you in, she'll bring you in and never call you out. And she will not let you settle for a career that looks great on paper, but feels like it's slowly draining the life out of you. You guys ready? Please give a warm welcome to career and executive coach Meredith Masse. So excited that you're here.
Thanks for coming, everybody. This is awesome. So glad you're here. And hey, let's give a some big love to Heather for kicking us off today. Show her some love in the chat. I truly appreciate you, friend. Thank you so much. Let's see if my little whoosh will work. Look at that. I just learned how to do that. Thank you so much again for being here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can actually have a conversation. Thank you all for being here and spending, for some of you in Colorado, for spending your lunchtime with me, with us today. Like Heather said, I am Meredith Masse, and before we dive in, let's set the tone for this. Some of you already know you want something different. Maybe you just haven't said it out loud yet. And some of you aren't sure you want to leave it all. You just know that the shine has worn off. And yet you don't quite know what to do with that. Either way, I know that you're not here by accident, because you don't register for a conversation about staying or leaving unless something is sitting with you. So I'm glad you're here. If you're in a place where you can, if you're just joining us, if you're in a place where you can, please feel free to share your cameras. It really helps the speaker know that she's talking to live human beings on the other side. So I encourage you to turn your camera on. I understand a couple of you are driving, so don't turn your camera on. And if you're at work and you don't want the boss to see what you're doing, absolutely fine. If cameras need to stay off, that's totally fine too. Just, I ask you to stay with me, keep participating in the chat. No need to apologize. So, Heather asked this, and for those who are just joining us, I'm going to ask again. Think about this. Have you ever looked at your career objectively and thought, on paper, this looks damn good? And then privately thought, so why does it feel so off? Let's see those yeses in the chat again, so we can include our friends who just joined us. You feel like on paper, your career looks pretty darn good. Thank you, Rebecca, for the thumbs up. Chelsea, yeah. Good. Now you can see that you're not alone, right? So again, like Heather said, I'm Meredith Masse, and for the past 17 plus years, I've worked with thousands of mid-career leaders who are successful on paper. Strong roles, strong titles, solid compensation, and yet they feel drained in ways that they don't always say out loud. And I help those leaders stop performing fine in careers that look great, but make them feel like they're running on empty, and start making career choices that finally feel like their own. Whether that means staying and leading like they actually mean it, or stepping into a new role that finally fits, either way, they stop dreading Mondays. And more importantly, they stop second guessing themselves. Here's what I've learned. Stuck is usually a story, and underneath it, there's a decision waiting to be made. Now, I didn't always know that. So if I can get a little vulnerable with you here for a minute, for years, I was sick to my stomach on Sunday nights, dreading Monday mornings. And one really stands out for me. I was walking to the bus stop to start my commute, and I missed the bus. And instead of getting in my car for the hour-and-a-half commute, my whole body just slumped. I turned back, I walked back into my house, called in sick, got back in bed, and thought, I just don't have it in me today to do this again. Not because I wasn't capable. I was pretty good at my job. I kept landing impressive roles. Each time, a better title, more responsibility, a bigger paycheck. But I kept landing roles that demanded everything I am not wired for organizations that I didn't believe in, and in environments that were literally grinding me down. I told myself I should be grateful. I told myself, maybe it's not that bad. And I told myself, I bet everyone else feels this way too. Who's with me? Have you ever said any of these things to yourself? I should be grateful. It's not that bad. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah. Until one moment changed everything. Stay with me here, because this next part is exactly why you came today. Bills to pay. Yes, gotta stay because it's responsible to stay, right? EK, thank you. Here's the thing. I was in the hiring process for yet another role, and as part of it, I took an assessment. And on one page of a 16-page report, down in the corner it said, avoid the stress of having to, and the list that followed described every job I had ever had. Literally, avoid the stress of having to do what you've always been doing. That was the moment it clicked. I wasn't bad at my job. I wasn't unmotivated. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't incapable. I was just exceptionally good at landing roles by telling hiring leaders exactly what they wanted to hear and not being intentional enough about choosing roles that actually fit me, how I operate, and what's important to me. That realization changed everything. I started choosing roles in a career path that did fit. And when I did, y'all, work stopped feeling like something I had to push through and started feeling like something I got to do. I had more clarity, more creativity, more energy. And then when I started helping other leaders see their own wiring clearly, defining what they actually wanted, and make decisions from that place, I watched them change how they showed up. Not always because they changed companies, but because they literally changed how they were choosing and started leading from who they actually are. That's what this is about today. This is not a quit your job talk. This is so, the boss doesn't need to be worried. It's not a quit your job talk. It's not a just push through talk either. This conversation is about shifting from feeling stuck to choosing on purpose. Because whether you stay and lead like you actually mean it, or step into a new role that finally fits, either way, you deserve to stop dreading Mondays, and you deserve to trust your own decisions. So here's where we're going today. We're going to look at why high-performing leaders get trapped in indecision, how to tell the difference between, a hard season, a hard moment, and a much deeper misalignment. And we'll close it with the one shift that moves you from circling the same question, should I stay or should I go, to making career choices that finally feel like yours. And if this work speaks to you and what we do here today, there'll be an opportunity at the end for us to talk about how to continue the conversation. So who's ready? Type some let's goes in the chat and tell me who's ready. Who's ready to start making more intentional choices about your career paths? Woohoo, I love it. Let's go. Let's go. Awesome. Oh, you guys, I love your energy. I love your energy. Thank you so much. All right, so let me ask you this. Just how long have you been waiting to feel clearer about should I stay or should I go? A few months? A year? Longer? A year. Thank you, Rebecca. More recent for you, Chelsea. Beautiful. Look. And thank you, because there's no judgment here. I've heard it all. Thank you for participating in that. I see you. Here's what I believe about the people in this room. You don't feel stuck because you're confused. You don't feel stuck because you don't know yourself. You're stuck because you've been told by everyone around you, maybe even yourself, that the responsible thing to do is to wait. Wait to decide until you have more information. Wait until it gets bad enough to justify leaving or good enough to justify staying. Wait to decide until the timing is right. Wait to decide until you're absolutely sure. So of course, you wait. Of course you do. It makes perfect sense. And we're going to let somebody else in. Okay. And while you wait, because you're a high achiever, determined, you keep showing up. You keep performing. You keep delivering. And you keep hoping that one day soon it'll all just feel clearer. Now, if you've wandered, come back to the conversation here. This next part is one of the most important things that people need to hear. That clarity that you're looking for, you build it by giving yourself permission to start, not by waiting. And just for fun, let's put that on the screen to remind you what we're talking about here. That clarity that you're looking for, you build it by giving yourself permission to start, not by waiting. So how in the world do you get started? Well, let me tell you about one of my clients. Sarah came to me as vice president of human resources, so VP of HR. And on paper, impressive. Obviously, strong title, solid salary, amazing total compensation, real responsibility as the head of HR. But in her day-to-day, she felt stuck, undervalued, worn down by constant senior team infighting that honestly was keeping the whole company from making any real progress. She wanted greater influence to help move the company forward. She wanted to be seen for the level she was already operating at. But she'd convinced herself that no matter what she did, the people at the top just couldn't see her. So she came to me, convinced she had to leave. And here's what I noticed almost immediately. Sarah wasn't suffering from a company problem. She was indeed suffering from a clarity problem. And she had everything she needed to build it, except permission to start. She knew who she was, but you guys, she had stopped trusting that. She was waiting for recognition before she would lead with conviction. She was waiting for the C-suite to see her value before she would own her own point of view. She was waiting to feel respected before she would act like someone worth respecting. I mean, she was waiting for permission to show up as who she already was. And honestly, it makes complete sense. When you've worked this hard for this long, waiting feels like the responsible thing to do. Right, EK? You got bills to pay. Yeah, who is this? Shamila, impossible for Sarah to make a change in that company. You've been there. You're feeling this, I can tell. Right? The last thing you want to do is make a move you'll regret. So you wait and call it being careful. The problem isn't that Sarah waited. The problem is that waiting was making her career decisions for her. I'm curious, and remember, this is a safe space. Have you ever thought, I just need a little more time and then I'll know what to do? Type yes in the chat if you've ever thought, yeah, I just need a little more time, then I'll know what to do. It'll just come to me. That clarity will just come. Who's with me? Who's been there? 1000%. Thank you, Chelsea. Yeah. Always. Okay. Even Rebecca. Yeah. Cherry, I've been there. Just wait. It'll come. Like Field of Dreams, if you've seen that old movie. Okay, but what waiting is really doing is handing your career decisions over to circumstances. And that's one of the things we're here to change today. Here's what happened when Sarah stopped waiting. we did the clarity work together. And sure, that eventually included sharpening her resume, brushing up her LinkedIn profile to reflect the leader she truly is. But the resume and LinkedIn work, that wasn't the shift. The clarity work was. And when she started seeing herself differently, like really seeing herself, she started showing up differently. We worked on clarifying for her, and I'm going to share my screen again. We worked on clarifying for her. Whoop. There we go. These 4 things. Who she is authentically as a leader. What she does best and is actually naturally hardwired to do. We clarified why her work matters to her and the where. That is the kind of workplace environment that would literally enable her to make her best contribution. And getting clarity on her who, what, why, and where, doing that work, something shifted. Not in her company, in her. She stopped waiting for direction and started leading with a point of view. She stopped trying to prove herself and started owning outcomes that mattered. She stopped performing as a version of herself she thought they wanted and started showing up as the leader she already was. And here's what happened next. The people around her, especially the CEO, other C-suite leaders, even the board of directors, started responding to her differently. Nothing about them had changed. She changed. And even though Sarah came to me initially saying that she had to get out of there, she didn't leave. In fact, she was promoted to executive vice president of HR because she had earned that real credibility with the CEO and the board. Her total compensation increased significantly, 6 figures, in fact. But the best news for her, she didn't stay out of fear. She didn't stay out of habit. She stayed because she got clear on who she was and how she wanted to show up. And when she did, her role, her influence, her impact were exactly what she wanted. She originally thought her problem was the company. I have to get out of here. She realized it was really that she'd been waiting for permission to show up as who she already was. So in her case, the clarity didn't come first. Deciding to stop waiting did. Sit with that for a minute. Where in your career right now are you waiting for someone else to give you permission? Safe space. I'm calling you in. I'm calling you in. Waiting for permission to say, this job is good and I'm going to make it even better. Permission to say, this isn't working and I'm going to land in something that's even better. Permission to trust what your gut has likely been telling you for a very long time. Just permission to start. Yeah, Rebecca, you're bored. Woof. Shamila, I can't make this up. She made the difference and got noticed. Hard truth. Nobody else is coming to give you that permission. This is where we start, not with your resume, not with your LinkedIn, not with your job search strategy, with you deciding that you're done waiting for clarity and you're ready to take the first step. Maybe with someone in your corner to help you trust it. Here's the thing about Sarah, and honestly, every leader that I've worked with who's made a real shift like this. They didn't wait to feel clear. They decided to do the work, and the clarity came from that. That's our first strategy. Stop waiting for clarity to arrive. Start building it on purpose. Which, of course, leads us to a second strategy, because once you get clear, you're going to run into something that's been quietly running the show this whole time. And a lot of high-performing leaders don't even know it's there. So we've talked about that clarity. And some of you are thinking right now, okay, Meredith, I hear you. Fine. I just need to do the work. I get it. Here's what I also know. If you're like the determined yet drained clients that I serve, you've been telling yourself that for a while now. I just need to do the work. And here you are, still circling. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because somewhere underneath all of this, there's a hidden belief that's been running the show. Could sound like this. If I just wait a little longer, things will work themselves out. Or maybe this. At least if I don't decide, I can't make the wrong decision. Or I'm holding it all together. Nobody can tell. Yeah, let's talk about that last one. Because that one is the most expensive belief in the room. I want to tell you about another client, David. He was a senior leader in the middle of a company reorg, and he was waiting to see how the reorg would shake out, waiting to see if things would get better, waiting to see if leadership would finally get their stuff together. And while he waited, he got more and more anxious, more literally disillusioned, more convinced that he had to get out. But he didn't leave, he just waited. And here's what waiting was doing for David. He started showing up differently. Not dramatically, not obviously at first, just differently. He told me he was reacting instead of actually leading. He was getting pulled into conflict instead of managing it. He was, as a high achiever, he was doing the bare minimum instead of bringing his best. He was going through the motions. And he thought he was hiding it. Spoiler alert, he wasn't hiding it. His team noticed, and they stopped bringing him their best ideas. They stopped seeking him out for collaboration. His peers noticed opportunities that would have naturally come his way started going to other people quietly, without an announcement, just stopped coming. And at home, the dread of all of this was building up, and it followed him through the door every single night. He was snapping at people he loved, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., going through the motions at home the same way he was going through the motions at work. And his sense of himself, who he was, what he was capable of, was quietly eroding. Now, if any part of David's story sounds at all familiar to you, I invite you to type yes in the chat again. Again, safe space. What is the waiting costing, right? Snapping at people you love, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., just going through the motions. Shamila, I so appreciate your courageous vulnerability. Thank you so much. I see you. I see you. And you're not alone. David thought the same thing. He thought waiting was the safe choice. He thought staying in indecision, he would have never called it that, but he thought that staying in indecision was protecting him from making a mistake that he might regret later. But it wasn't keeping him safe. It was making the decision for him. Every single day he waited, the anxiety built. And while it built, circumstances were choosing his career decisions for him. Now, if you've checked out, check back in here, because what I'm about to say, this is the part that most leaders don't realize until it's costing them more than they expected. And honestly, here's what I wish I had known the morning that I missed the bus. Indecision is not a neutral place to wait. It has a price tag. Let me share my screen again so that we have this thought with us. Indecision is not a neutral place to wait. It absolutely has a price tag. And most high-performing leaders are paying it every single day without even necessarily realizing it. Here's what I've seen it cost my clients. Your confidence, right? Every day you stay stuck, that voice in your head that says, maybe I can't trust myself on this, gets a little louder. It costs you your presence. When you're mentally somewhere else, weighing options, worrying about the right decision, wondering if you'll make a mistake, you can bet the people in the room with you, they feel it. Your team feels it. Your people at home feel it. And the way opportunities slowly stop finding you because you've stopped showing up like someone who's ready for them, that starts to happen too. It costs time we can't get back. David literally came to me frantic, not because something catastrophic had happened, but because he'd finally seen what the waiting was costing him, himself. And he didn't want to pay that price anymore. So we did the work. In addition to the who, what, why, and where, this time, we also worked to help him understand how he'd been showing up and why. I'm checking my other screen to make sure that's showing. To help him through this, to help him understand how he'd been showing up, and honestly, why he was showing up that way, and why opportunities weren't coming to him, why his team wasn't paying attention to him. To help, first we started with helping him see that his thoughts about the reorg, about his leadership, about his team, about his boss, about his own value were driving feelings, those feelings of anxiety and honestly powerlessness. He felt powerless. And those feelings were driving the behaviors his team and peers were experiencing every day. So listen, when David started recognizing his thoughts as stories he'd been telling himself and started choosing to think about his situation differently, everything else started shifting too. He stopped waiting and started leading like the leader he knew he was meant to be. And here's what happened. The frantic energy settled. The conflict with peers dissolved. His team started coming back to him again. And David, who came to me convinced he had to leave, started to feel he told me for the first time in a long time, like he was actually choosing, not reacting, not waiting, choosing. Now, because of the reorg, David, well, not because of that, he did leave, but not in the way he thought he would, not running away from the situation in the company, not waiting to be pushed out by the reorg. He knew his days were numbered, but he wasn't waiting to be pushed out. Instead, he landed in a role that he chose, one that needed exactly who he'd become, one that lit him up in ways that he honestly, he stopped believing were even possible, especially at work. Because by then, he knew what he did best. He knew what drove him. He knew what kind of environment the real David needed to thrive. He chose on purpose, and it showed. That's the shift, not stay or leave, but how you're thinking about your situation, because that's driving everything else. Your thoughts create your feelings drive behavior, and your behavior is what everyone around you experiences. So right now, if you are sitting in indecision, trust me when I say it's showing up in your leadership. And of course it's showing up. Of course it is. It makes sense. You're only human after all. And you haven't had the space to think about your situation differently yet. That's what we're creating here right now. Space for you to notice your thoughts. What are the stories you're telling yourself about your current situation? Your feelings. What's coming along for the ride as a result of those stories? And your behavior. How are you showing up as a result? Here's the one question that starts to shift all three. I encourage you to write this down. The one question that can shift your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. What else could be true? I'm thinking this way. The story I'm telling myself is this. Yet, what else could be true? Just that. And then look for a more, let's call it a more generous story. And notice what happens to how you feel and how you show up when you find it. That's the shift. Which brings us to strategy 3. Because now that you can see it, the waiting, the cost, the way it's been leaking into every aspect of life, the question then becomes, okay, how do I actually choose? Not from fear, not from exhaustion, not from, I just need to get out of here, but on purpose. We have covered a lot in a very short amount of time. We've talked about clarity and how it's not something you find, it's something you build. We've talked about indecision and how it's not a safe place to wait. It has a price tag. And this next strategy, this is the one you came for. How do I actually choose? Here's the truth I want to leave you with today. Most high-performing leaders in your position are asking the wrong question. They're asking, should I stay or should I leave? Spinning on that for months, sometimes years, like you all indicated earlier. When the real question, the one that actually moves you forward, is this: am I making this decision from fear and circumstance, or am I making it from clarity about who I actually am? That's it. That's the whole thing. That is choosing on purpose. Here's how it works. There are only two diagnostic questions you need to answer. Let me pull those up. Two diagnostic questions you need to answer. Oh, we talked about that. Here we go. The two questions. Is what I'm experiencing just a hard season? Or is it a deeper misalignment with something more fundamental? The role, the culture, the boss, the work, the board, the people. A hard season ends. Misalignment doesn't get better with a 2-week vacation. It may feel similar inside, but honestly, they require completely different responses. Here's how you start to tell the difference. A hard season has a source you can point to, a brutal project, a difficult transition, a temporary overload. Like you can actually see the end of it. Misalignment doesn't have an end. It has constant heaviness. It's there on Sunday night. We've all heard of the Sunday night scaries, right? It's there logging on to the Monday morning Teams or Zoom meeting. It's there when you're walking into the building. It's even there on the good days, maybe just a little bit quieter. If you've been honest with yourself today, which I truly hope you have been, you already know which one this is. A hard season or a true misalignment. The second question to ask is, if fear, obligation, everyone else's opinion were completely off the table, what would you actually choose? Not what you think is responsible, not what makes sense on paper, not what you think you should want. What would you choose? Because for most of the leaders in this room, that question either feels instantly clarifying or instantly terrifying. And both of those responses are valid, and both tell you something important. Now, don't let your brain talk you out of what you just felt. Stay right here with me. This next part is where it all comes together. Because here's where most people get stuck. They answer these two questions, and then they still don't move. Because simply knowing what you want isn't enough. You have to trust who you are first. I want to tell you about one more client, Emma. Get that out of the way off the screen. And thanks, Heather, for putting those questions in the chat. I appreciate that. And I'm just checking in the chat before we talk about Emma. Sonali, better to not wait for too long, especially when values don't align. Amen. Amen. So Emma came to me saying exactly what Sarah and David said. I have to get out. And she was not wrong. She'd spent nearly a decade doing work that had slowly stopped fitting her values, fitting her superpowers. She wanted to stay in her industry, clean energy, by the way, but she really wanted a different role within it and approach her work from a completely different angle. So it could be work that she cared about, meaningful work to her, and from a perspective that actually suited her and needed how she's wired to do what she does best. But she was also dealing with a leader who, how do I say this nicely? Consistently undercut her strengths. Didn't champion and advocate for her behind the scenes. And would not help her explore other opportunities within the company. She did anyway, but she didn't let him know. Emma knew the answer to both diagnostic questions. Hard season or misalignment? For her, misalignment. Deep and clear. In this case, stay or leave? Leave, no question. If fear were off the table, yeah, leave. Again, no question. But here's what she didn't know yet. Where to go? And more importantly, who was she going as? So we did the work first. First, the who, what, why, where work. Who she is as a leader. What she's actually hardwired to do best. Why it matters to her, and where she needs to be. The culture, the people, the environment, the boss, and the role that needed exactly who she is. And something happened that I see every time a client does this work. She's a firecracker, and Emma became unwilling to settle. She was networking with so much confidence, interviewing with so much clarity about what she actually wanted. And when 2 offers came in, as a career coach, I almost couldn't believe it, but here we go. She turned them both down. She turned them down. Not because they weren't good opportunities, but honestly because she knew enough about herself to recognize they weren't the right opportunities for her. So she chose on purpose to stay a little longer. A lot of that had to do with because there was a potentially big year-end bonus coming. And when that bonus did come, I think it was just last month, it was more than she expected. And with that in her little pocket and clarity, literally in her bones about what she really wants, she turned in her 2 weeks notice about 2 weeks ago. She's not escaping from, but going to by choosing. She has real opportunities in front of her and the confidence to know exactly what she's looking for. So whether your answer is stay or leave, the path forward is the same. Hopefully you see that. Get clear on your who, your what, your why, your where. Learn to recognize the stories you've been telling yourself and choose better ones when the stories you're telling yourself don't support what you want. And you will start making career decisions on purpose, not from fear, not from circumstance, but from clarity about who you actually are. Honestly, without that foundation, you're just reacting. With it, you're choosing on purpose, and that changes everything. Not just this decision, but every career decision after it. Before we move on to what's next, I want to hear from you. Not how you walked in feeling, but how you're feeling right now. How are you feeling with these 3 strategies? Drop one word or a phrase in the chat and share what's going on for you right now. We have just a few minutes left. Relatable. Thank you, Sonal. Resonates with you, Rebecca. Awesome. Empowered. Thank you, Heather. Wondering how the change happened for these individuals. Shamila, it was through the coaching and implementing and really diving deep into what we've talked about today. Thoughtful, wrapping your head around things. Thanks, Chelsea. Ooh, EK, clarity. That gave me some goosebumps. That's why we're here. Hold on to those feelings. Which brings me to what's next, because if anything you've heard today has landed, if you recognize yourself in Sarah that we talked about, in David, in Emma, maybe you're sitting there and probably sitting there thinking, okay, so now what? Maybe Shamila, maybe that's your question. Okay, now what? I'd love to be the person who helps you choose on purpose. It starts with one conversation, just you and me, focused entirely on what's true for you right now. It's called your next move consult, and it is completely free. Heather, would you mind putting that link in the chat? There it is in the chat. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, take a breath. You just did something most leaders in your position never do. You stopped, you showed up, and you let yourself think about your career decisions differently. Y'all, that's not nothing. That is actually everything. Here's what I invite you to notice right now. That thing you carried in today, the heaviness, the quiet dread, the leftover Sunday scaries, does it feel even just a tiny bit lighter than it did an hour ago? That shift you're feeling, that hopefully it's not just relief. That's what clarity feels like when it starts to build. And you built the foundation for that today. You did that. Here's what I also know. You're leaving today with some new things you didn't have when you walked in. Hopefully a different relationship with the question, a framework for how to answer it, and maybe for the first time in a while, a sense that the answer is actually within reach sooner rather than later. Here's what I want for you right now. To take action with this momentum and give yourself permission to start while you're feeling it. Because this feeling, this little bit of clarity that's starting to build, it deserves to go somewhere. That's exactly what your next move consult is designed for. Again, one conversation, just you and me, all about what's going on for you right now. Heather, do you mind dropping that link in the chat one more time? And here it is on the screen as well. Let's get clear on exactly where you are, identify what's happening and keeping you stuck, and map out your most powerful next step. Whether that means staying or leading like you mean it, or stepping into a new role that finally fits. And imagine this, you get off that consult call, say that 5 times fast, and for the first time in a long time, you don't feel the weight of the question anymore. You feel clear. Not because everything is figured out, but because you finally know where to start. That's what this conversation is designed to give you. And like I said, it's completely free. Now, if you're thinking, I'm not ready yet, listen, you are. That's why you're still here. I need to think more about it. You've been thinking about it. That's also why you're here today. I don't want to waste your time, Meredith. This is exactly what my time is for. What if I'm not the right fit? If you recognized yourself at all in Sarah, David, or Emma today, you're exactly who this is for. Exactly. The only thing standing between you and that conversation is about 30 seconds and a few clicks. So I invite you, please book your next move consult. Pick a time, show up. That's all you have to do. Just show up, and we'll take it from there. I'm going to pause there. I'll leave this up and take some questions. I saw Cherry asked, please mention any occasion when it is good to wait. So there's a difference between purely waiting, Cherry, and strategically waiting. So for example, I say to just about anyone I come across, in this crazy job market we're in, don't be running out and just quitting unless you got, a six-figure bonus like Emma did, and with plenty of money in the bank. But don't actually wait. Just notch it back in your current role. Give your current role 95%, 90%, 80%. Keep doing the work, keep showing up, but maybe a little less than if the answer is you want to leave, right? Give it 80% and use that extra energy to for that job to pay you to find what's next. In terms of if you decide to stay and make your current role better, I honestly can't think of any reason when or an occasion when it would be good to wait. Thanks, Rebecca, if she hasn't already left. What other questions before we close out? Thank you, Cherry. That was a great question, by the way. So maybe you came in today carrying this heavy question that a lot of leaders carry alone, and you don't have to do that anymore. You showed up, you participated. Thank you for participating in the chat. And with your energy in the chat and your questions, I feel like something shifted. That shift is yours. Nobody can take that. Not your Monday morning inbox, not your difficult next conversation with your manager, and the clarity you started building today, it's already yours. So here's all I want you to do when we close this Zoom in 1 minute. Don't overthink it. Don't let the noise of the afternoon talk you out of what you felt here. Just take one step, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's booking your next move consult. Maybe it's sitting quietly for 10 minutes and letting today's conversation land. Maybe it's just deciding right now that you're done letting circumstances choose for you. Any one of these is enough, because that's what choosing on purpose looks like. You're exactly the kind of leader this work is for. And I hope today you see it too. Thank you all so much for being here. Now, go choose your next move on purpose. Thank you so much.